Hey guys, it's Josh again, here for another week of these virtual Sunday school lessons that we've been doing online on YouTube. This week we are continuing the Sermon on the Mount series that we've been doing. Last week was with Maggie as she talked about purity, and she did a great job of stressing not only purity with certain sins, but with all sins, how it's important to keep your heart pure. It's not a matter of the actual sin itself or the action of the sin. It's a matter of your heart and where your mind's at and what you're thinking, because God looks at the heart, not the outward appearances and actions. And then the previous week before that, the first week of this series, was with Richie as he talked about the comparison of sins and how they hold on different levels or the same levels, what we think about that as a society and what God thinks about it, and then what the Bible teaches us. And all of these are in the Sermon on the Mount series, like I said, and they're all in Matthew chapter 5. And this week we will be staying in the same area, looking in verse 33. And this week is on promises, or our words, or the reputation that those words create, that whenever we break them or keep them. So if you'll look in verse 33 with me, it says, "Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'Do not break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord.' But I tell you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is the footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. Simply let your yes be yes, and your no be no. And anything beyond this comes from the evil one." That's a pretty drastic ending, isn't it? But he starts off here very similarly to the other passages we've seen with Maggie and Richie here in the Sermon on the Mount. He starts off saying, "Again, you have heard that it was said to your people long ago." So translating it a little bit, maybe you guys can understand it better, he's simply saying, you guys have heard over time, you've been told, or you've grown up being taught. And then he says, "Do not break your oath, but keep your oaths you have made to the Lord." So what's an oath? It's simply a promise. And then in verse 34, when he says, "But I tell you, do not swear at all," we have different meanings for the word swear, but in this context, he's talking about promises as well. So he's saying, do not promise at all. But he starts out here saying that he knows all of you have heard or been told that it's not good to lie. It's not good to break your promises. So why do you guys think it is so hard for us to keep our promises? This is the reason that Jesus makes it very imperative or important for us to not break those promises, is because very often we're not going to be able to keep the promises that we make. A lot of the times, you guys, all of us, me included, make promises in order to move on from a situation, but the main reason we make promises is to add value to the words or that we say before the promise itself. So if you tell your mom, "I'm going to clean my room," and 2 weeks ago when you said you were going to clean your room and it still hasn't been cleaned from 2 weeks ago, she doesn't believe you, because 2 weeks ago you didn't clean it and it's been dirty for the whole 2 weeks and you've made it even dirtier. So now you have to add the words "I promise," or "hand on the Bible," or whatever phrase at the end. Um, People have had different phrases. A phrase I've never liked that I heard a lot in middle and high school was a lot of kids said, "I swear to God," right? Which is not good at all. And none of these phrases are good, right? Because the goal is to be able to tell your mom, "I'm going to clean my room," and she believes you right away. So how do you do that? How do you make your original words just as strong, if not stronger, than saying "I promise" or those phrases? You have to keep a good reputation in your word, and you have to hold integrity in your heart. So you have to make sure that you follow up on your word. Make sure you create value. The value of your word is not something that you are given. It's not something that just comes lightly. It's something you have to earn, and something you have to continue to grow as you move on in life. So because there are going to be people you meet who have been lied to their whole life and they've never met you, but because they've been lied to by so many other people, they're not going to believe your words right away. So that first time, you're going to have to really do a good job of following up on what you say so that they know, hey, I can trust this person. So when you give someone your word, it's your track record, it's your reputation, and it can be considered great, mediocre, or even poor. And it's important to know what extent you'll go to. If you know what extent you'll go to in order to keep your word, then you know your boundaries and you can set those boundaries. You can say, hey, I know I'm not going to do this. So you're not going to tell someone that you'll do that. So you know you're not going to clean your room because you have this video that you want to watch. So you're going to tell your mom, I'll clean my room after this video, or I'll clean my room tomorrow. So you want to make sure that you know your boundaries and you think about what you're saying before you say it so that you can create and then maintain that good reputation for your words. The wrap up for this first point. Did I say our first point? I've forgotten. We've heard that breaking promises is wrong. That's our first point. We've heard that breaking promises is wrong. So the wrap up for our first point is most people in our culture would agree that it's wrong to break a serious promise we've made to someone. But Jesus challenges the lack of integrity in our hearts long before we ever break a promise. He challenges the words that come before the promise. He says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. So point 2, Jesus says making exaggerated promises is just as bad as breaking promises. So if you make an exaggerated promise and then you hold the part that's not exaggerated, you've still broken that promise. So that's where it's held to the same standard as breaking a normal promise. You still break a part of the promise. And Jesus is again looking at your heart and evaluating what you're thinking and why you're making that exaggerated promise. So I want to talk about more of those phrases. Like I said, people, when I was younger, said, I swear to God, or for whatever reason, people knew I went to church a lot, so they would say, do you promise with your hand on the Bible? And a lot of my friends knew I carried my Bible around in my book bag, so they would want me to get my Bible out and literally put my hand on the Bible. It was ridiculous, but that was something that a phrase or an action that they wanted me to add to my words to make them more valuable. And people say, oh, I promise, or some people, I don't know if people still do pinky promises. I think the concept of it is silly. It's seen as silly now, but people used to do that to add value to their words. So think about whatever phrases or whatever actions you guys do to add value to your words. Think about what your friends expect from you to add value to your words. So why does Jesus say it's wrong to do these? Why is it so unaccepted for us to do these in the first place? If you look at the ending part in verse 37, he says, simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. If you start out a relationship with someone, a friendship, not necessarily, I know the word relationship is associated with like boyfriend, girlfriend. I'm talking about a friendship. Or if you even start over a friendship and you start a new track record of your word and you start off by saying, I'm not going to say I promise. Like I have friends who would say, you promise hand on your Bible? And I said, no. And they say, so you're not going to do it? And then I'll say, no, I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to tell you that because I want you to trust in my original word. It was not until later on, like senior year, that I started doing that because I realized how silly or ridiculous it was to add on these phrases. So if you start out a relationship or your reputation by letting your original words be just as good, if not better than the phrases, then you're never going to have to add on these phrases in the first place or later on in your reputation, right? So once you break that reputation, that's when you're going to have to work harder and build that trust back with whoever you've broken it with. And the difficult part about reputations is that a reputation is not something that it's not one-on-one. It's not excuse me, it's not between you and one person. Once you have a reputation, that reputation gets passed around. So you might break a promise with one person, and that's the only person you've ever broken a promise with. But because you did that, everyone else may know about it, and they may not trust your word as much anymore because you broke a promise with that one person. So you want to make sure that you keep your promises, but really and truly not your promises. You want to make sure that you do what you say you're going to do. Make sure your words have value to them, just as much value as those phrases. Because Jesus, the wrap up here I'm reading, it says, compared to the first two lessons in this series where we discuss murder and adultery, the topic of breaking a promise might not seem like a big deal, but Jesus takes the integrity of our hearts quite seriously. So that's simply saying, like Maggie was talking about last week, it's Jesus looks at your heart, and it's very important to him what you're thinking. So you can tell people whatever you want, and the only people who knows whether or not you're going to do it whenever you say it is you and Jesus. He knows your heart. He knows what you're thinking. So, point one, we've heard that breaking promises is wrong. Point two, Jesus says making exaggerated promises is just as bad as breaking promises. And point three, Jesus challenges us to be people of integrity in everything we say and do. In this section of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus challenges us to be people whose simple, straightforward words can be trusted. And this shows that we're trying to follow Jesus by living lives of integrity. So this third point wants us to look again at verse 37. So I'll read it again. Simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. So this isn't only saying that, like, yes or no questions, it's not referring to the specific words of yes and no. It's referring to your words overall. It's saying whatever words you use, those should be the words that you mean. Think about your words before you say them, and make sure that you mean what you're saying, so that you know that, hey, I'm going to actually do this. And then you won't have to make these promises or phrases and add them on in order for your words to be more valuable, right? Our lesson here wants you guys to think of someone who lived their life like this. They never add on more phrases, or they never add on promises. They simply let their yes be yes and their no be no. And the lesson wants you to describe the impact that person has had on you. So this person is someone you can trust, right? This person, a lot of the times, is someone you can go to and you know, I can talk with them about this and they're not going to go and tell everyone about it. Especially if I tell them, hey, I need you not to tell anyone about this. I need this to be between me and you. You know they're not going to do that, because they've, over time, created a reputation where, their words hold value for you, right? This last question here, how can speaking honestly and with integrity improve our lives and our relationships with God and with other people? So, like I said, it's interesting to look at how your reputation, whatever standard it's at, or not standard, whatever level it's at, whether it's great, mediocre, poor, it often mirrors that with your relationships. So if you have a poor reputation, your relationship may be poor because there's not any trust there. So whenever you have a good reputation, there's a lot of trust in your relationship. So it's a good, healthy relationship where you guys can trust each other. And I know right now there's not really a lot of situations, where you guys are interacting with other people during this quarantine. So this is a good time to kind of give yourself a little reset and to think, okay, once all of this is over, I'm going to stop making empty promises. I'm going to stop adding on exaggerated phrases, and I'm going to simply let my yes be yes and my no be no from now on, right? And then you can start your reputation over, kind of, and hold this deeper value to your words and increase the value that from where it was before. And that you'll see an increase in your relationships and an improvement in your relationships and you'll be able to add on more relationships because of this. So I really hope that you guys are able to do this and to put action behind this, not to just hear me say this and then move on through your day. I hope you guys are watching these videos that we're posting. I hope you guys are making it as normal as possible, meaning I hope you guys are able to read in your Bibles along with us. I hope you guys are activating what we're saying, and I just want you guys to know, Maggie and Richie and I have said it at the end of every week, we miss you guys. We would much prefer to be in person with you guys and to experience these lessons with you guys and to hear your answers and to hear your thoughts. And it's looking like it's going to be sooner rather than later, hopefully in the next month, where we're able to do that. And I just can't wait for it. I hope you guys know we're praying for you and we care about you, and I hope you guys are doing well in this time. See you guys later.